So, do you want to go into the whole discussion about then moving from the basic orientations to actually developing training frameworks, and then moving on to that format of a 10-day regional training of trainers?
I must start with the first training. It was like a pre-testing, which is the genesis of the AMA manual. Because women had started demanding more in-depth knowledge and understanding of the application of CEDAW, we held an expert, we called it an expert group meeting, if you remember. It was held in Bangladesh. Andrew came, Alda Fasio came, Marsha Freeman came, and we developed a framework for a larger in-depth training. It was only a framework. There was no materials or anything, case studies or anything attached to it. Then we took that framework and we said we will, Ramya got involved after that, we will do pre-testing. And I think that was a 5-day training which we held in Savar. You were enormously pregnant at that time. And we said in Savar, because the hospital was there, if you suddenly delivered, there would be no emergency. And we said we'll do a training of trainings. So we decided we will develop a resource package that would outline core content and methodologies for training. The concept of, and that also that the concept of equality and non-discrimination would be central to this, and that this package would be a dynamic package growing as other training sessions were conducted, and that its richness drew from participation and response of all participants over several years starting from 1994. The expert group that we held was to develop this framework was Andrew, Alda Fasio. I must mention how Alda Fasio was part of Avon's network, and she was a real asset to us and a companion. Masha was there, you were there, Pramoda Rana was there, I was there, and this meeting also helped us clarify the nuances of understanding equality. And then we went off into Sawa without really much materials. Uh, I remember you and I were resource persons. Madhu was there. Ramya was there. And what Ramya did was we were given a topic or a theme, and we spoke from our hearts what we understood about the topic. And based on all the orientations, and Ramya took detailed notes, and her notes then became the content of that session, and we put it together and developed the AMA manual. That's how we did it. And in the training, in the history document manuscript, this chapter where I have talked about this, how we developed that package, I have called it training of trainers takes place, all guts and determination, little experience. That's how we started that. And I've also said that this Sawar training was a very collective learning process. There were, yes, it was from the 18th to the 22nd of December 1994 with 16 participants, and they're mostly South Asians, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh. So it was mainly, the trainers were Shireen, Ramya, and myself. We had no materials, we had a training agenda, topic headings, topic outlines, and background reading as prescribed by the expert group. We gave ourselves our own briefs, read as much as we could, prepared case studies, and then we started off. As I said, it was all impromptu, but Ramya took down detailed notes, and that was the start of the AMA manual. Now, what did we put into this package? First of all, it was about CEDAW and its concepts of substantive equality, the principle of equality, and we said the state accountability, which was central to CEDAW as an international treaty. We emphasized that. We said we must have a rights approach to women's advancement and a theoretical understanding and framework of human rights law that is reflective of gender-based violations suffered by women, because human rights was not internationally was not looking so much as gender-based violence. Why are women's rights human rights? And then that we said women have to claim rights, be knowledgeable, and that social institutes create inequality and perpetuate inequality. And then we had a session on the law. That the
But
law,
before that, Shanti, before that, didn't we also do a whole, if not a full session, on understanding disadvantage and understanding how disadvantage is historically not only created but reproduced? I think that I sort of remember
yeah,
that was
yeah, we did do that. That was more of the ideology of disadvantage
Hmm.
and how that happened. That did come in, definitely. And then we looked at the law as an instrument for claiming rights, but how we have to look cautiously at the law as well. And we have to make it more compliant with the human rights of women and gender equality. Um, and we have to be aware of the politics of law and that there is a cultural and gender bias, uh, and that we need to bring an interaction between local and international advocacy, uh, and understand the human rights system for its applicability at the local level, and our advocacy has to engage with that global to local concept. And we did talk a little bit about the optional protocol at that stage also. So this is so human rights law and making it more gender sensitive. And you're right about disadvantage and the social construction of disadvantage and inequality and rights approach and claimability of rights and creating a synergy between local and international activism. This is fundamentally what this, and of course,
And I think what is important to highlight is also that throughout all that, we kept an eye on developing a constituency of women in
yeah,
each country that we worked in. So it would never become a kind of expert group approach. It was very important to identify women's organizations and mobilize them in the
true.
use and application of CEDAW, getting
You,
involved in the reporting process and getting involved with the concluding remarks, etc., etc. So this idea of a constituency was always very, very
yeah, the idea of constituency, mobilizing of women, collective action was always there. No, Shireen, I'm just also recalling when you talked about disadvantage and the ideology of disadvantage, we drew that understanding from the session on institutions and inequality.
right.
Because what it helped us to do, that session on institution and inequality, is to analyze the ideology of sex difference, illustrating the social construction of differences between women and men, and that is the basis on which um, responsibilities, power, rights are distributed between women and men, and that discrimination arises out of that, and social disadvantage arises out of that. Uh, so it was it was ideologically very sharp. It was technically understanding the law and the politics of law and being cautious about the law in that sense. The need to transform the law from its gender and political bias, and the need to bring international human rights standards to also absorb the human rights of women as part of international standards, and linking uh, domestic advocacy and international advocacy and causing a synergy between the two. All of this we did in that through the training. Two things that the training also aimed at, and that was, and I that the experimentation on developing a training package helped us also learn that the text of CEDAW tells us what should be achieved for women, what are the standards. But the methodology by which to achieve this had to be worked out in context.
Yes.
And the obligation to do this rested largely with governments. But governments were either clueless or had no political will. And that is why the activism of women uh, in enabling the government to work out in context how to achieve what the CEDAW wants us to achieve was critical. And this is what informed the development of frameworks and methodologies over the years after that. Uh, that is one thing
Yeah.
that we need to, and that finally we said we talked a lot about the use of the law, and that if we use the law as it should be, aware of its politics and aware of its bias, we need to transform the law in a way that with the aim that legal advocacy must bring about social change, not just produce a remedy for individual women, which the law is constantly used for, and that lawyers tend to do, how to argue a case for a particular woman. But we said no, we need to use the law to bring about social change, uh,
Yeah.
and equality for all. Uh, so
So,
this is what
yeah.
was the an intention and aim of the way we developed that package. And that package that developed was developed in Sawar, uh, grew multiple times subsequently.
Hmm. I'm also remembering that one of the challenges that was, I can't remember, maybe it was participants from Philippines, if I remember,
No, so,
in one of the trainings which was based in Kuala Lumpur,
uh,
who said that that the whole gender binary was a problem in CEDAW, because CEDAW talks about men and women only, and that was one that I was not ready for. I remember that. That was in 2008, maybe.
could
Um,
be, but that has changed now, no?
yes. So, but I'm saying that there were times when got off. Uh,
No, that was definitely a weakness in CEDAW, because CEDAW was drafted in the 1970s, really.
mm,
And at that time, these questions were not so visible or raised even by women's groups. And it's only much later that that binary perspective um, of CEDAW came about. And yes, even we were not very prepared for that at that time. But it has now changed. CEDAW does address the rights of women regardless of their gender.
mm,
They have, even in their general recommendation 21 on core obligation to the state, they have mentioned the question of equality and non-discrimination as being a right for all people, regardless of whether they are of their sexual orientation or transgender identity, of the gender identity. They've already brought that in. But I just want to, as a final point, say that while in Sawar, we depended for the training, we depended on the outline and the framework that the expert group meeting gave us, and I read out the names of the expert group. The people who actually conducted the training were you, me, and Ramya. But as I said, the training package developed multiple times through subsequent trainings. When we did, as you said, training of trainers, and we did our about 8-day training of trainers in many parts, including in the Pacific. And it finally a very substantive package was put together, and we called it the Amma Manual, which I've had to explain even in my history document, that Amma in Tamil it means mother, and we said this is the mother of all packages because it will still give birth, it will still develop and still give birth. And a team put that final package together, and that team was Eleanor played a very significant role, Madhu played a significant role, you and myself, the four of us were the ones who put that package together. By 94, Eleanor had become an integral part of our training team. I must mention that. And she was intellectually brilliant, and I would sit and listen to her during the planning sessions, my eyes glued to her face, taking down every word she said in the planning sessions on the applicability of certain concepts at a practical level. She could link theory to practice so brilliantly, and I learned a lot from her. IWRAW-Asia Pacific gained much from Eleanor, and she several hours of planning session, and I have said to her about her in the training document that Eleanor would sit back, eyes narrowed between bouts of smoking, articulating substance and content of concepts and operationalizing the application. And I would sit with my eyes glued to her face, taking in every word she said, recognizing its brilliance. And
Yes.
I've said, but if you want something frivolous at this stage, I put a footnote that Eleanor would appear at every session and moment, even if they were informal ones, or whether it was in sickness and in health, impeccably dressed,
I remember.
perfectly groomed and made up, and always in high heels.
Stilettos, in stilettos.
Stilettos.
I remember that.
She was very unique, yeah.
Yeah.